Today we're going to be making a basic bechamel sauce to use with making lasagna. Okay, let's get started. What you're going to need is about 40 grams of butter, 40 grams of plain flour, about 20 grams of finely grated parmesan, some black pepper, a pinch of salt and a pint of milk. If you want to increase the size of this dish, as long as the butter and the flour are increased proportionally, so always weigh the same, then it will scale up nicely. Okay, let's move over to the hob and we can get started making the sauce. Okay, what you're going to need is a reasonable sized frying pan. We'll start off by popping butter into the pan. And we're going to melt that on a very low heat. We don't want to rush it. If we burn the butter, it's going to darken and it's going to taste bitter. So what we need to do is just let that take its time and slowly melt in the pan. You can break it up and stir it around a bit to help it on its way. Once the butter's nicely melted, we can tip in the flour. Now I'm changing from a wooden spoon over to a whisk for this so that we don't end up with lumps in our sauce. So we want to stir this around until the butter and the flour are combined and it will start to make a fairly thick paste. All the time we'll just keep it on a low heat at this stage. Okay, once that's all combined we can start to add the milk. We can start off with a fairly generous amount for the first time, maybe about half a cup. Then we can add a little more heat and start to whisk all this together. Quite quickly you will see that that's started to cook into a thicker sauce, so we can add a splash more milk. And just keep whisking it around until the flour and the butter take on all of the milk and it becomes a thin sauce. Need to have a little bit more heat in the pan at this stage, just so you're actually cooking all the ingredients together. And again we can see that's thickened, so we can add more milk. We'll keep repeating this process of stirring and adding milk until we've got a nice creamy sauce that doesn't thicken any further. Just adding a little at a time, warming it through and whisking it in. just adding a splash more milk, and again just whisking it in. Once we reach a point where it looks like it's not going to take any milk and it's not thickening any further, we can add a reasonable amount of heat to the pan and get it finally cooked right through, just to check that it's not going to thicken anymore. If you see it's starting to thicken a bit more, add a splash more milk. Okay, that's about there. So what I can do is turn off the heat. You can see that we now have a fairly thin creamy sauce. So at this point, I'm going to add some black pepper, reasonable amount of black pepper, a little pinch of salt, and we can add the parmesan. Now while that's off the heat, you can then stir this in and just combine all the ingredients. And there we have it, a nice creamy bechamel sauce to be used with making lasagna. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have, perhaps you'd like to give it a thumbs up. Maybe consider subscribing to the channel and clicking that notification bell so you'll get alerts when I release future videos. Thanks for watching.